Do you think very often about the sort of young woman she would have been? Oh.
Don't start me.
No, I'm sorry. I thought you were going all right. I thought we could go there.
Well, I was, but, you know, there are things that hit you.
Hello, I'm Layla McKinnon. Welcome to this special edition of A Current Affair on an historic day for the Chamberlain family. Tonight, Tracy Grimshaw is in Darwin, where she's spoken exclusively with Lindy, her only one-on-one interview after coroner Elizabeth Morris found baby daughter Azaria was taken by a dingo at Uluru 32 years ago. It's a day Lindy Chamberlain has waited for decades.
Lindy, congratulations.
Finally there.
Did you think this day would ever come?
I must admit I was beginning to wonder whether it would be left to my kids or grandkids to hear this. But it's finally done.
You have that document that you've fought for decades to get right there on your lap. Would you like to show it to me?
This is the death certificate, finally. And it says the cause of her death was as the result of being attacked and taken by a dingo. And that is, of course, the Fourth Inquest, held on the 12th of June 2012. Elizabeth Morris, Northern Territory coroner. Wouldn't you know it'd have to be a woman to get it right?
What occurred on the 17th of August 1980 was that shortly after Mrs. Chamberlain placed Azaria in the tent, a dingo or dingoes entered the tent, took Azaria and carried and dragged her from the immediate area. Mrs. Chamberlain, upon being alerted to Azaria's cry, returned to the tent area to see a dingo near the tent. Raising a cry which alerted others, Mrs. Chamberlain then ran for a short distance after the dingo back to the tent, confirming that Azaria was missing.
What does it mean to you to have this finding?
Well, so many things that are sort of all kind of mixed up together. It's such a vindication of truth. But it is how do I put this? It's almost like words failure to get what you feel into words. It's probably impossible. But just to well, I don't even have to be there to see Greg Lowe saying, "You bloody beauty." He'll be dancing around the kitchen in Tasmania.
Greg and Sally
will be drunk by now because he'll have had a few beers to toast it. And I can't forget Max and Amy Whittaker and that have all been told they were liars because they were the eyewitnesses and they couldn't possibly be right because there was, you know, the god of science in the middle of all this.
You raise a glaring point that's been a consistent point throughout this case, is that all of the people who were with you on that night have supported your version of what happened. Many of them have become friends of yours.
Even the police that were there on the night have been supportive. It's the ones that took over after that that were a different story.
You have been pardoned, you've been exonerated, you've been compensated. Why did you have to keep pushing for the result you had today?
Well, it was always unfinished business. While you have an open finding, it can always be opened at any stage. And there were so many misconceptions and rumours, and even today and yesterday, stuff in the paper from people who purportedly should know what's happening, saying, oh yeah, but there was always this point or there was always that point, and they give personal opinion, like Frank Morris. Last night I saw him on saying, oh yeah, you know, I really shouldn't have picked up the clothes and I probably should have asked the boss. And yet...
Frank Morris was the original investigating police officer.
Yes. I'm sorry, I keep jumping around because I know these people so well by now, I forget that some of the public do, and some of the public weren't even born when this happened. And I still have questions.
What questions do you still have?
Why did Frank Morris at the First Inquest come up and say to us, "I'm really sorry, I was only doing my job"? What's he apologising for? Picking up the clothes and rearranging them and not telling anybody till he got caught out that he'd done it? It's a rookie mistake. And that's all it is. It's just a mistake. I don't believe anywhere along the track that he had any malicious intent. However, he came up later and said, "I'm glad that you could hang in there and stand up for the truth, because I didn't have the courage to do that."
The coroner in this case heard evidence of something like 239 dingo-related attacks in Australia since 1990. If Australians had been allowed to believe you back in 1980, do you think some or many of those might have been prevented?
I definitely think some of those would have been prevented. There are some, however, that wouldn't have been. Like yesterday's, well, no, I only saw it yesterday, but Sunday Territorian had the front page of Kakadu family told, "Don't leave food around because we've got marauding dingoes." So they were very carefully put it all away. And what did the dingoes do? Rip their tents to shred and pull their bedding out, which is not food. And these animals do that when they get overconfident round people. They look nice, but it's a case of beware, because they are a really beautiful but cunning animal.
The coroner noted today that there is no other case like the disappearance of Azaria, but there had been dingo attacks before Azaria was taken.
Yes.
One only a matter of weeks before. Why do you think everyone struggled to believe you?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? If I could answer that, I'd probably be a seer. But look, we need to go back a lot further than that. I mean, we had evidence of attacks before the coroner, back to the Royal Commissioner, I should say, back to like 1880 or before. And the reason I kept fighting for this inquest and fighting for a dingo finding is because despite the 3 other deaths by dingoes or cross dingoes since Azaria died, there's still nothing by law until today to say that there's ever been any sort of dingo attack.
The cause of her death was as the result of being attacked and taken by a dingo.
Can we be more blunt though? Can we go right to the core of this and say that the reason you were pursued was not just because people were sceptical about whether a dingo could do this? I mean, you believe that there were bigger reasons afoot than that, don't you?
Well, there was definitely some political intrigue in the Northern Territory, yes.
Of what nature?
You want to get me sued still? They're not dead yet. When people are dead, you can tell the truth, but in Australia, between now and then, until they're dead, you can't.
But you believe someone had it in for you, didn't
And
you?
I think at least one gentleman in particular could do with not being around, so we can tell the truth.
So you're waiting for one person to die before you can name
Or
a
two.
name? Or two.
And then definitely, there was some very personal ambition involved in this.
When you consider what you've been through for 3 decades, that must gall you.
Well, call me. It certainly used to upset me. But at some stage, you have got to learn to move on. I will not let that event control and colour my life. I won't let it affect my decisions in the future. I'm giving myself permission to take back control over my own life and to go ahead and to live my life. And I can use what's happened to me as illustrations, as a way to help other people, as a way not to let those sort of things happen to me again. I'm not saying what you did to me was all right. It was not all right. But I'm not going to let that control me in the future. I'm handing the responsibility of that back to you. That's your fault, whether it's the situation that happened or whether it's a person. And I'm moving on. I'm going on with my life. And until you learn that, you're stuck. And I moved on a long time ago.
The media room has erupted as journalists rush for the phones and radio...
If you have had to forgive people who might have had political or financial incentives to go after you, have you also had to forgive the media? Because a lot of people have suggested that what happened to you and Michael was trial by media.
Well, a lot of it was trial by media, and yes, there were people in the media that were real skunks, to put it mildly. But there were also people in the media who were very positive and worked very hard to get the truth out there. And I think there's people in all fields that should be ashamed of the way they've behaved over this, and individuals at home as well, because nobody sat on the fence. That was uncomfortable, and somebody pushed them off to one side or the other.
Do you acknowledge now that there were certain elements of yours and Michael's behaviour in the wake of Azaria's disappearance that made people uncomfortable about you?
Definitely. You know, we're human, and you have all sorts of reactions, and sometimes you can think, oh my goodness, why did I do that? Or there were many times when I thought, why did Michael react like that? But I also learned when I was married to him that he didn't react like other people. And when you know Michael, you just go, oh yeah, that's typical of what he'd do. And I suppose he did the same thing with me. And people say to you, oh, you know, you look like such a hard person, and then I meet you in reality, or I do public speaking somewhere and they go, oh, wow, you're really different to what we see on TV. And even Meryl Streep did that. She said, thought I had all down pat your role, and you've just blown me out of the water in 10 minutes. And now I've got to go back and look at it all again. And then she said, now I'm really cross that there isn't scope in the way the movies are written, because of what it's about, to show your lighter side, because you're always into mischief. My dad used to say that was my middle name, and those that know me know I'm not particularly serious all the time. I get through the serious stuff and then back to the happy stuff fairly quickly.
The perception of you, I think, at the time was that you were cold. And I have found you to be quite an emotional person in the times that I have met you.
Yeah, embarrassing, isn't it? And Aidan's like his mother. I think he cried through most of it this morning. And apart from his little time in the box, that is the first time he's ever gone to court. Mm. It's like, I don't want to be there, but I do. I don't want to be sorry later. I have just got to do this. And for him to put his emotions out in public, I mean, that's not the thing blokes do, is it? But he said, I've got to be there, I've got to do it. And all the kids say, your fault, we cry, Mum. And I blame my dad, he was the same. We're soft touches.
You know, I was watching Aidan today and thinking about the enormous shadow that this has cast over his entire life. I think it's something that is sometimes forgotten, the toll that this has taken, particularly on your two boys.
Well, I think, was it you he said to, I'd really like to be known for something other than being one of the rock people?
One of the wild rumours back at the start of all of this was that Aidan, at the age of 6, had killed his baby sister and you'd covered up for him.
Yeah,
That's
and
a
the
hell
other
of a
one
load.
was that Regan had done it and I'd covered up for him. And it wasn't until they did the mini-series that they said, do you realise Aidan blames himself because he didn't shut the tent? I was like, I never even thought of it. So I got him then and said, son, zip was broken. So, you know, my problem more than yours, but they'd have got in anyway.
You were talking before about forgiveness and the people that you have needed to learn to forgive. I think it's natural for any parent in a situation like yours to struggle with guilt, given that, you know, you're on the planet to protect your kids. Did you have to struggle with that in the beginning?
I don't think I've ever struggled with guilt. I have certainly thought, I wish somebody had told me, because all three kids would have slept in the car like that night. Like they had a couple of nights before, it was like, I don't know that this is a secure environment. I think they need to sleep in the car, and we'd slept outside on the ground. So the fact that we were never warned when the bus tours were, that was something I thought, this was preventable. And I'm the type of person that is told something like that, go, okay, I will make my own precautions. But we were never told, and you think, okay, I'm in the middle of a couple of thousand people there that night. Who thinks you're going to be attacked in the middle of that? It's like, no, I'm safe here. But we weren't. And so I regret that I wasn't super cautious, but then again, how would I have known?
Shouldn't you have known? A 3-year-old girl had been dragged out of the car just a few weeks earlier by a dingo.
We didn't know that.
I know.
They
Shouldn't you have
hadn't
been
gone
told?
to the press. Well, they were telling all the bus tours, but they were not telling the cars, which were families with young kids. And they're the ones that needed the warning more than the bus tours.
When you think back, are you angry?
No.
Were you angry?
Sad. Really sad. I think it's more than angry.
It would have been Azaria's 32nd birthday yesterday, and you were arriving here for yet another court appearance.
That was not easy. Birthdays are always hard to get over because they're the happy times, and I choose to remember the happy times. And you know, it is choice. You choose 80%, I think, of how you feel is how you choose to feel. You can wake up and say, I'm going to be miserable today, and you usually are, because it's a conscious choice. And you can say, I'm not going to be miserable, I'm going to find the good things in what's happening today. I'm sure you get ups and downs, but you can choose to dwell on that and say, I'm angry about this, I'm mad about that. We're absolute idiots if we think the people that hurt us are going to make it better for us. Because they're not. They hurt us for a reason. And it's up to us to say, will I let them control how I feel today? Well, for me, no way I won't.
Do you think very often about the sort of young woman she would have been? Oh.
Don't start me.
No, I'm sorry. I thought you were going all right. I thought we could
Well,
go there.
I was, but, you know, there are things that hit you. And like the coroner said today, you actually never get over the death of anyone. You can pass on, you can learn to deal with it better, and I don't care who they are. One of the worst advice people give you is you'll forget in time. You never forget.
Mrs. Chamberlain-Creighton, Mr. Chamberlain, Aidan, and your extended families. Please accept my sincere sympathy on the death of your special and loved daughter and sister, Azaria. I'm so sorry for your loss. Time does not remove the pain and sadness of the death of a child.
The coroner struggled to talk about it at the end of her finding today.
I noticed that. I wondered whether she's had something in her past that made her relate.
Were you struck by that? I mean, because that's a very different treatment than you have had over the years in the Territory, isn't it?
By authority figures, it's been very different. And I've noticed, well, at least over the last 20 years, it's been interesting to see the average Territorian on the street say, enough's enough, Lindy. You know, the public are behind you up here. We wish the government would get on with it. And I personally wish the government had quit spending the public's money. Those that loaned me money to pay for our expenses, which were $5.5 million to the end of the Royal Commission and have grown since then, they've just forgiven me for the interest. But despite media interviews I've done, I still haven't earned enough to cover that.
You've talked about money, you've talked about compensation. Have you any legal advice on whether you can sue now that all of the boxes have been ticked in your case?
I haven't even bothered to ask. Not going there.
You don't want to, don't need to?
Look, like I said, people have to take responsibility for what they've done themselves. If I sued the Northern Territory government over this, who pays? The public that had no choice in the matter and nothing to do with it. And I think there is a time when you say enough is enough, get on with your life and go, let it go. We fought this long, not just for ourselves, and not a matter of Lindy wants her own way, so do this. It's a matter of we need justification for the eyewitnesses, for Australians themselves to know that these animals are dangerous, in order to stop the wrong handling of forensic things, in order for there be somewhere to go for people to be able to appeal when there is mishandling in the legal system. It works all right when you're guilty, but it doesn't work all right when you're innocent.
Do you want an apology from the Northern Territory government?
Look, an apology would be nice, but you and I both know if you force someone to apologise, they don't mean it, and you know they don't mean it, and all you're doing is asking them to lie. So unless it is voluntary from them, I'm not interested.
Final question, is today's finding something that you would celebrate? Is celebrate the right word?
I don't know, somebody asked me that today, and it's like, I celebrate the final triumph of truth, but I don't celebrate her death, and the two are so intertwined. I have no idea what I feel about that.
I don't blame you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Absolutely riveting story, and Lindy Chamberlain has had to be strong for so long, as has her whole family. Well, Michael Chamberlain has thanked the courageous and independent coroner for her finding, saying she was speaking for the dead. And he said, "You can get justice even when you think that all is lost."